And this is the project we're going to do today. I'm calling this one Snowy Mountain Home. Okay, and these are the stamps that were used. These are all Stampscapes stamps. And this one was from the Nature Set 6. These groups of trees was from the Nature Set 9. The barn is from the Nature Set 16. The little country house is number 247B, Country House. This little dual tree here is from the Nature Set 15. The snowbank from the Nature Set 14. This group of 3 trees is from the Nature Set 3. This big pine tree is from the Nature Set 1. And the path is from the Nature Set 7. And then these were the different inks and Copic markers and whatnot that I used. So I'll zoom in here so that you can read. If you need to, you can pause the video. And so these were the inks that were used. And this is the list of the Copic markers that were used. Also used the Copic Multiliner 0.3 in the sepia. And then other supplies that I used, such as blending brushes, styluses, applicators, temporary spray adhesive, handmade stencils, stamp platforms, the chrome coat glossy paper, and the UV resistant acrylic coating. And so let's begin. Okay, I did a test stamping just on some copy paper, printer paper, and I've cut out a 1/4 sheet of chrome coat paper, and I'm going to put that in this stamp positioner, but up in this corner, and then I'm going to stamp up the barn and the house, and also the trees. I'll also do the trees, and I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black for this. And let me zoom out so you can get a better view of what I'm doing. This is up in that corner, and so I'm just stamping down on the sheet. And now I'm going to use some Memento Cottage Ivy, and I'm going to restamp the trees. Okay, I'm going to give these trees a little bit of a chance to dry, but I've cut some mask. Okay, and then next I'm going to stamp these trees here in the background. So I'll use my Tim Holtz stamp positioner, which I've already positioned the trees in there where I want them to be. And I will position this, and then I'm going to ink them up. Then I'll use my Memento Cottage Ivy. Okay, and I have a 1.5 inch spacer that I am going to place in my positioner, and then I'm going to butt this up against here like this, and then I'm going to ink up these trees right here. So I'll start with my Memento Tuxedo Black. Then I'll use some Memento Cottage Ivy. Okay, now I'm going to remove the masks around the cabin. So I'll remove the one on the bottom and this one here. And then I'm going to stamp these 3 trees. Okay, I've made a 1/2 inch spacer, and I'm placing that at the bottom of my positioner. Okay, I'm actually going to position this one in the right corner, 1/2 inches from the bottom. And so, okay. And then these 3 trees, I'm going to ink these up now, starting with the black. Okay, now I'm going to use Memento Cottage Ivy. Okay, next I'm going to stamp the path. I am going to leave the barn masked, and I have a 1 inch L that I've created here, and I'm buttoning this in the lower left hand corner, and then I will put my thing like that. Alright, and actually I think I'll put this up here. And then I'm going to just ink up my path here. So I'm going to use Memento Tuxedo Black again. Okay, now I'm going to unmask the barn. And I will stamp this big tree. So I will first ink up with Memento Tuxedo Black. Okay, now I'm going to use some Memento Cottage Ivy. Okay, and next I'm going to stamp in the snowbank with some Memento Tuxedo Black. Okay, next I want to stamp in some clouds up in the sky. And I'm going to want to put the sun right here, so I'm going to want to avoid putting the clouds there, but I'm going to use some Distress ink, Faded Jeans. Okay, and I'm going to give all this ink a good chance to dry before I start coloring anything. Okay, I'm going to start coloring now. I'm going to start with some Brocade Blue. This is an older Stampin' Up! Ink. And I will use my color box stylus. Okay, next I'm going to use some Distress ink. This is Faded Jeans. If you want to watch some videos with good tips on how to use this stylus, I recommend checking out some of the videos by Kevin on the Stampscapes YouTube channel. He gives some really good pointers on the best way to use this stylus. Okay, next I'm going to add a sunburst. I'm going to use a stencil that I made. Let me show you against some dark paper what this stencil looks like. I used my Scan and Cut to cut this pattern out of some thick plastic. And I sprayed some 505 temporary adhesive on the back of my template. Then I marked which side was the top so that I know what side it is. Then I removed some of the temporary adhesive by just putting it against my skin, and then I washed the back under some warm running water so that it doesn't leave a lot of residue, but it's still a little bit sticky. And I'm going to put this down where I want to have the sun. I'd say probably about like right there. Then I'll put it down, and it will stick, as you can see, because it has that temporary adhesive on the back. Then I'm going to use my Hero Arts Unicorn White pigment ink. I'm going to use a Tim Holtz stencil brush or a blending brush, which I've devoted this one to white pigment ink. And since this stencil is quite small, I am going to put some paper just to the side in case I overlap when I'm applying the pigment ink. I don't want to get pigment ink anywhere else. Let's see, in fact, let me share this one a bit. So I will put this underneath here and this underneath here. And I'm doing this because it is such a small stencil and I want to protect the rest of my work. And so I just dab the stencil onto the Unicorn White pigment ink, and it adds pigment ink, and then I just blot it like this. Okay, I'm going to give this a chance to dry, and then we'll continue on. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to go clean off my stencil. Okay, I'm going to color the barn next. I'm going to use Copic markers, number E31, E34, E37, and E39. And I'm going to start with the E34. Okay, I'm going to use a Sepia 0.3 Copic multiliner, and I'm going to do the outline of the door here. Okay, for the cabin, I'm going to use E34, E37, and E39, and I will start with the E34. Okay, for the door on the cabin, I am going to use YR24 and YR27. And I'll begin with the YR27. Okay, for the windows, I'm going to use Y11 and Y19. And I'll start with Y11. Okay, for the trim around the cabin, I'm again going to use my Sepia multiliner, the 0.3. Okay, for the porch, I'm going to use B97 and B99. And I'll start with the B97. Okay, for the shadows here on the ground, where the shadows were on the ground, I'm going to use YR21 and YR23. And I will start with the YR21. Okay, and for the path, I'm going to use some YR20. Okay, I'm going to use my Sepia multiliner again, and I'm going to color in the trunks of the trees here. Okay, for the rocks over here behind the cabin, I'm going to use EO2 and EO4. And I'm going to start with EO4. Okay, I'm going to add some snow now. I'm going to use my Hero Arts Unicorn White pigment ink again. And And I am going to use a Fantastics applicator. I've specially prepared this one. I have cut off the tip here. I'll compare it with an original one with the pointy tip. And you can see here how I've just cut it so that it kind of comes to a wedge point. So this is a very flat wedgy top here so that I can get a fairly straight line for my pigment ink. And I just touch it to the pad, and then I can start adding my snow. So I'm going to add snow here to the trees. Okay, I'm going to give this first layer of pigment ink a chance to dry, and then I'll come back and add the second coat. Okay, I'm going to add my second coating of pigment ink. Okay, the snow I put on these trees down here has kind of disappeared because of all the pigment ink that I put in. So I put it back in the stamp positioner that it was in, or the stamp platform, and I'm going to restamp the green. See, and I think I'm going to put an extremely light coat of pigment ink on the top of these clouds. Okay, now I'm going to put the pigment ink back over here on these trees. Okay, I'm going to use the bullet tip Fantastics to add some shadows now into the snow. I'm going to use my Distressed Ink Faded Jeans. Okay, I think I'm probably finished with this now, and since there is a lot of pigment ink on this, I'm going to let it dry overnight before I spray it with the acrylic coating spray, and so we'll come back then. Okay, this is after it's dried overnight, and so I'm going to give it several coatings, very light coatings, of the acrylic spray to seal this, and I'm going to give it very light coatings because there is quite a bit of pigment ink on this, and I don't want to smear around the pigment ink, which happens if you put too much on. So after I finish the multiple coats of the acrylic, we'll come back. Okay, and this is the final product after I've sprayed it with its acrylic coating. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye.